1970s were a golden moment for R&B, where velvet harmonies met gritty grooves pouring out of every city block. These are 15 R&B one-hit wonders from the 1970s that deserve to shine again. Number 15. To Each His Own by Faith, Hope, and Charity. Released in 1975 under RCA, this gem came from a trio that floated right in the middle of the disco tide while keeping one foot firmly in classic R&B. They had been working behind the scenes for years, backing up bigger names before finally stepping into the spotlight. When To Each His Own landed, it felt like a sudden spark catching on dry wood. The song's tight groove and crisp vocal blend came from a session produced with the unmistakable touch of McCrae, who was just starting to ride the wave of his own massive success. Stories from the studio talk about how the track almost didn't make the album because the group felt it was too soft. Yet, the moment it hit radio, it became the piece everyone remembered. Listening today, you can almost picture the mirrored dance floors, the soft glow of colored lights, and the quiet hum of conversation under a spinning disco ball.
Do it like you wanna, boom, 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 to your bed, and always.
It charted solidly on the R&B lists and managed to cross over to pop audiences, giving the trio their one big moment. If that smooth elegance felt like a warm-up, the next track leans a little deeper into the grit of 70s street soul. Number 14, Be Thankful for What You Got by DeVaughn.
Though you may not drive.
When DeVaughn walked into Omega Sound Studios in 1972, he wasn't a seasoned performer. He was the part-time government employee with a dream and a song he had crafted in the quiet of his Washington, D.C. apartment. That track was Be Thankful for What You Got, and its mellow pulse carried the understated heartbeat of the era. Released in 1974 on Roxbury Records, it slipped into a landscape dominated by funk giants and soaring soul groups, yet it carved out its own lane instantly. One of the most surprising stories behind it is that the background musicians included members of MFSB, the same legendary collective responsible for so many Philadelphia soul hits. DeVaughn's calm, confident delivery contrasted with the lush instrumentation, creating something that felt like a conversation whispered across the dinner table. People still recall hearing it drifting from passing cars on warm summer nights, the kind of tune that made front porches and open windows feel alive.
Dig in the scene with a gangster white wall.
The song's message of grounded gratitude became its legacy, resonating with listeners across generations. Although DeVaughn never repeated the commercial success, this track remains a beloved time capsule of 1970s soul simplicity. And if that was a porch-light glow of reflection, the next entry hits with a flash of pure dance floor electricity. Number 13, Dazz by Brick. Released in 1976 on Bang Records, Dazz exploded onto the scene at a time when Atlanta's music identity was still finding its shape. Brick cleverly mixed disco and jazz, and even named their creation by blending the two styles into Dazz. For a band that had been hustling in local clubs, this sudden surge felt surreal. One of the striking stories is how the band originally brought the track in as a rough jam session, not expecting it to become their defining moment. But the producers instantly heard the magic and pushed them to polish it up. The result was a slinky, horn-driven celebration that fit perfectly with the era's love of experimentation. Hearing it now, you can almost feel that sweaty club energy, the packed Thursday night crowds, and the thrill of a groove that refuses to let go. It shot into the Billboard Top 10 and gave Brick national recognition, though they never quite found another hit with the same reach. Its legacy still echoes in the way artists sample and reference its unmistakable style. If you like that blend of playful rhythm, wait until you hear the silky chorus coming up next. Number 12, Boogie Oogie Oogie by A Taste of Honey. When A Taste of Honey released Boogie Oogie Oogie in 1978 on Capitol Records, the disco wave was cresting at full height, and few expected a relatively unknown band to drop one of the most infectious anthems of the decade. The group had been grinding through military bases and small club circuits, sharpening their sound while navigating an industry that rarely centered at women instrumentalists. That's part of what makes this story so special. During recording sessions, bassist Janice Marie Johnson laid down that unforgettable bass line in one take, reportedly surprising even the engineers. The groove became the backbone of the track, a hypnotic invitation that listeners still respond to instinctively. Close your eyes, and you can almost see the platform shoes, the shimmering outfits, and the heat of a jam-packed summer dance floor as the opening riff fills the room. It soared to number 1 on both the R&B and pop charts, turning A Taste of Honey into overnight stars. While they scored another hit years later in a different style, this track remains their shining disco moment. If that was pure dance floor celebration, the next song brings a softer, velvety kind of tenderness that defined mid-70s slow jams. Number 11, Float On by The Floaters. Released in 1977 on ABC Records, Float On was a curious, dreamy entry into the R&B landscape. The Floaters were a Detroit-based vocal group with aspirations of stepping into the same lineage as the smooth harmonizing acts that came before them. But when this song arrived, it introduced something both familiar and strangely hypnotic. Legend has it that the group wasn't fully convinced the spoken name intros would work. They worried it might come off too gimmicky. Instead, it became the hook everyone waited for. The production felt like a slow-moving cloud drifting across a late-night city skyline, with lush strings and gentle percussion setting the mood. You can practically imagine dimly lit rec rooms, couples swaying close, and the soft murmur of conversation floating just above the needle on the record. The song made its mark on the the R&B charts and even crossed into pop territory, cementing the Floaters' brief but memorable claim to fame. Though they never replicated the magic, their hit became a beloved staple of classic slow jam playlists. And if that dreamy glide left you floating, the next track pulls you back into a sharper, funkier groove that defined the decade. Number 10, There It Is by Tyrone Davis.
As I pack my bags to leave.
By the time There It Is arrived in 1973 on Dakar Records, Tyrone Davis had already been working tirelessly through the Chicago circuit, sharpening his style in smoky lounges and late-night venues. But this single stood apart. It wasn't one of his bigger mainstream hits, yet it became the one that listeners kept tucked in memory, resurfacing like a forgotten treasure. The track came together during a period when Davis was transitioning toward a more polished soul sound. One fascinating detail is how the rhythm arrangement came from a jam his band used during warm-ups, something Davis insisted had a pulse too irresistible to ignore. The finished product blends crisp horns, smooth guitar strokes, and Davis's warm conversational vocals. Hearing it today feels like walking through a 1970s neighborhood block party. You can picture folks leaning out of open apartment windows, kids playing kickball in the street, and the air carrying that unmistakable Chicago soul breeze. While it did fine on the R&B charts, it didn't break through the way his earlier work did, leaving it floating in that sweet spot of underrated classics. If that taste of Chicago soul warmed you up, the next entry dives into a more psychedelic edge that defined a different corner of the decade. Number 9, I Believe in Miracles by the Jackson Sisters.
This one of the mad songs. Y'all better get on your feet. You better get on your feet.
Released in 1973 on Tiger Lily Records, I Believe in Miracles didn't explode right away. The Jackson Sisters weren't connected to the Jackson 5 despite the confusion it caused around their name. They were a soul group from Detroit who found themselves caught between shifting labels and limited promotion. Yet, their one-hit wonder ended up becoming a goldmine for crate diggers and DJs decades later.
Nothing but the righteous.
In a quirky twist of fate, the label that originally issued the song was rumored to be tied to some questionable business dealings, leaving the group without the push they needed. Still, the moment the needle drops, the track radiates energy. You can imagine it spinning at underground funk clubs, dancers sliding across wooden floors under fading neon lights, completely lost in the fierce rhythm.
That's the way Grandmama used to sing it. But we want to sing it like this.
Though it barely made a ripple in the mainstream at the time, its afterlife is extraordinary. It became a beloved, rare groove staple in the UK and inspired countless samples in hip-hop and dance music. It's the definition of a sleeper classic. If that deep cut lit a spark, the next song turns up the spotlight on a smoother, more romantic side of 70s R&B. Number 8, Sideshow by Blue Magic.
So let the sideshow begin.
When Philadelphia group Blue Magic released Sideshow in 1974 on Atco, they delivered one of the most heartbreakingly beautiful singles of the decade. They had been part of the Philadelphia soul movement, but nothing prepared listeners for just how tender this track would feel. It opens like a theatrical curtain rising, complete with carnival-style announcements that set the stage for emotional spectacle.
Step right up, hurry, hurry, before.
Behind the scenes, producer Norman Harris pushed the group to lean into vulnerability. The strings were arranged with a sweeping elegance, and the musicians from MFSB once again lent their magic to the recording. As soon as the vocals glide in, the entire song feels like a soft spotlight shining on a wounded heart. Listeners remember hearing it late at night on quiet radio stations, the kind of song that made you reflect on old breakups, lost chances, and the way young love stings. It climbed the R&B charts and became Blue Magic's defining hit. Though they had other successes, Sideshow is the track everyone instantly recalls. If that emotional ache tugged at you, the next entry brings us back into the warm glow of feel-good 70s harmony. Number 7, Rock Your Baby by George McCrae. When Rock Your Baby arrived in 1974 on TK Records, it felt like the future rushing in. George McCrae had been working behind the scenes, mostly as a backing vocalist, when producers Harry Wayne Casey and Richard Finch needed someone to lay down a guide vocal for a new groove they were building. McCrae stepped into the booth, delivered the performance in a single take, and stunned everyone in the studio. That guide vocal became the master. The track's silky pulse, gentle guitar shimmer, and hypnotic rhythm made it one of the earliest global disco hits. Its creation was almost accidental, built from a drum machine prototype and minimalist instrumentation that made it feel strangely ahead of its time. Picture the summer of '74, windows rolled down, beach towns glowing at dusk, and this song floating like warm air over boardwalks and neon signs. It topped charts worldwide and inspired a new wave of dance music, though McCrae never again reached the same level of crossover success. Still, this shimmering groove remains his unforgettable moment. If that smooth early disco glow got your shoulders moving, the next track pulls us deeper into the funkier corners of the decade. If these forgotten R&B gems are bringing back memories, give this video a like. It helps keep this music alive and glowing. And stick around because we still have 7 timeless tracks waiting to shine. Number 6, Kung Fu Fighting by Carl Douglas. Released in 1974 on Pi Records, Kung Fu Fighting was never meant to be a hit. Carl Douglas recorded it as a quick B-side filler during his studio session, and most of the team considered it a fun throwaway track. But when they played it back, everyone in the room felt the spark. The blend of playful lyrics, sharp percussion, and that unforgettable vocal flair sealed its fate. Douglas had been working in the London soul scene for years, chasing a breakout moment that always seemed just out of reach. Suddenly, this quirky high-energy groove became unstoppable. You can imagine roller rinks packed with teenagers, disco lights flashing across their faces as they kicked and spun to the beat. Radios blasted it from cars cruising city streets and suburban boulevards alike. It shot to #1 across the world, becoming one of the most recognizable R&B-infused novelties of the decade. Despite its massive success, Douglas couldn't replicate its global reach, leaving it as the definition of a one-hit wonder. If that burst of funky fun made you grin, the next track slips into something smoother and more sentimental. Number 5, When You're Young and in Love by the Marvelettes.
Spring in the air.
Released in 1970 on Tamla, this shimmering single marked a bittersweet moment for the Marvelettes. They were early Motown pioneers, yet by the time this song arrived, the label was shifting focus toward newer acts. Still, this track carried the warmth and elegance that had defined their sound from the start. It was a cover of a 1964 Ruby and the Romantics tune.
Seems to shine twice as bright.
But the Marvelettes breathed new life into it with tender harmonies and a soft, hopeful glow. Behind the scenes, Motown's evolving landscape meant the group wasn't getting the full promotional push they once enjoyed. There's a quiet tension in that story. A beloved group delivering one of their most heartfelt performances right as the spotlight began to drift away. Listening today, you can practically feel the soft breeze of a spring afternoon.
When you're young and in love.
Young hearts racing and the hopeful courage of first love blooming under pastel skies. Though it didn't climb as high as some of their earlier hits, it remains one of their most cherished later-era recordings and a reminder of their lasting influence. If that tender glow wrapped around you, the next entry ups the tempo with a groove that lit dance floors on fire. Number 4, Why Can't We Live Together by Timmy Thomas.
Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live together?
In 1972 on Glades Records, Timmy Thomas crafted a song unlike anything else on the charts. With only an organ, a simple drum machine, and his soulful voice, he created a haunting plea for unity during one of America's most turbulent moments. Thomas had spent years gigging, writing, and searching for a breakthrough, but nothing hinted that this minimalist experiment would become his defining moment.
Everybody wants to live together. Why can't we live?
One of the most fascinating details is how the label initially questioned whether such a bare bones arrangement could work. No horns, no strings, no lush backing vocals, but the starkness became its power. Close your eyes and you can picture a dimly lit studio. Thomas reaching for emotional truth as tape reels spin steadily in the background. The song drifted out of radios late at night, carrying a quiet intensity that listeners never forgot.
You want to steal my brother?
It reached the top of the R&B charts and crossed over globally. Yet, Thomas never scored another hit of this magnitude. The track's influence continues today, sampled, covered, and honored for its raw honesty. If that reflective moment pulled you in, the next track brings a wave of radiant, summery joy. Number 3, Sunshine by Enchantment.
Sunshine, it's mighty.
Released in 1986 on Roadshow Records, Sunshine finds Detroit group Enchantment at their most radiant. Known for their deeply romantic style, they crafted a song that felt like stepping into the glow of a perfect July morning. This was early in their rise, when they were still carving out their identity among the era's powerhouse vocal groups.
Your pretty smile.
A charming behind-the-scenes story reveals that the opening harmonies took hours to perfect because the group insisted the blend had to feel like an emotional sunrise. The musicians in the studio recalled how the group delivered the final take with eyes closed, swaying gently together, letting the warmth of the melody guide them. Listening now, you can almost smell fresh-cut grass, hear distant laughter from a neighborhood park, and feel sunlight streaming through half-open blinds. The song was a modest R&B hit and became one of Enchantment's signature tunes even as bigger chart success came later. It remains a soft glimmer of pure 70s soul positivity. If that golden glow felt uplifting, brace yourself, because the next track dives into one of the most iconic bass-driven grooves of the decade. Number 2, Forget Me Nots by Patrice Rushen. When Forget Me Nots arrived in 1982 on Elektra Records, it carried the final shimmer of that late 70s R&B spirit, even as the new decade began reshaping the sound. Patrice Rushen had already built a reputation as a gifted keyboardist, composer, and musical director, but mainstream audiences mostly knew her through quiet admiration rather than big chart moments. This single changed everything. Behind the scenes, the song almost never happened. Label execs doubted that Rushen's smooth, jazz-infused approach could break into the fast-shifting R&B landscape. Her team insisted, and the moment the bass line dropped, they knew they had something undeniable. Freddie Washington's bass riff became one of the most recognizable grooves of the era. Listening now, you can practically feel the glow of an upscale 70s lounge. People dressed sharp, moving gracefully under dim red lights as the song guides the room with effortless cool. It became her signature hit, charting across R&B and pop formats and eventually inspiring countless samples. While Rushen continued as an influential musical force, this track stood as her one towering commercial breakthrough. If that sophisticated groove pulled you in, get ready. The number 1 spot brings us to a soul treasure that still feels timeless. Number 1, Ring My Bell by Anita. Ward, released in 1979. Warner Records. Ring My Bell was the perfect storm of late 70s R&B and disco. Anita Ward had been working toward a career as a teacher before stepping into music almost by chance. The song was originally written for a teenager as a bubblegum tune. But producers reworked it into a sleek dance floor ready groove and handed it to Ward. She delivered the vocal with a mix of innocence and shimmering confidence. One of the most surprising stories is how Ward was hesitant about the track. She worried the repetitive hook might feel too simple, Yet, that simplicity became its magic. Close your eyes, and you can imagine a packed club in 1979, strobes flickering across the floor, dancers losing themselves in the rhythm, and the song's electric sparkle filling every corner of the night.
Made for me and you.
It soared to #1 on the pop and R&B charts worldwide. Ward never matched its massive success, leaving this moment as her unforgettable shine in music history. The song continues to pulse through movies, commercials, and retro playlists, proving its grip on our collective memory. And if that joyful finale brought a smile, the journey does not end here. From shimmering slow jams to club-shaking grooves, these forgotten R&B one-hit wonders remind us how rich and varied the 1970s truly were. Thanks for taking this soulful trip with us. Subscribe to keep the groove alive and never miss our next musical journey. Your end screen is ready. Click on the next video waiting for you. 15 most iconic R&B songs from 1980s that defined the era and keep the rhythm rolling.